Welcome to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Oakland County and the state of Michigan. I'm your host, Tyler Kieft. You can always join us Monday through Friday for our live program from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., as well as live to tape and replaying all throughout the day on our partnering stations that join us live to tape throughout Oakland County. And you can find more information on all of those stations and when we're airing all across Oakland County and throughout the state of Michigan by visiting civiccentertv.com/megacast. That's also the place where you'll find all of our full shows and each individual segment on demand as well. So you can always join in on us for a full hour each and every day if you're not able to join us during our live show anytime, anywhere from civiccentertv.com/megacast, or join us for select segments. If you're really into politics, you can join us each and every week as we talk to Dave Dulio from Oakland University. If you're into the latest in business and economics, how that's going to affect us here in Oakland County, how business and economic news affects us here in the county, here in the state of Michigan, domestically in the U.S., and how the news from here in our local area may affect the U.S. and the world. We talk with Dr. Michael Greiner from Oakland University on Fridays, or mental health topics with Carrie Krawick, a therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic, or all of our other regular segments and those that we bring in each and every week to talk about the latest stories making headlines around Oakland County and throughout the Great Lakes State. You can always find those segments on demand on civiccentertv.com/megacast. Another great resource for you on our website is our local news page each and every day before we do this program from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. live. We scour the internet, we scour the local newspapers all across the state of Michigan to find the top stories making headlines that may impact you right here in Oakland County or impact us statewide, which includes, of course, a direct impact on our local area here in Oakland County, where we originate our broadcast each and every day. We post a link to each of those articles so you can follow along with us and read those articles in full after the show or even during the show as you're listening along with us on our TV, radio, and streaming show, talking about all of the latest stories making news all across the state of Michigan. Our top story this morning comes from the news team at the Detroit News, as threats were made on Tuesday at West Bloomfield Middle School, shutting down classes early in the day as an alleged spoofed call called in an allegedly spoofed number, called in a bogus bomb threat just before 8 a.m. early yesterday. Shortly after receiving the threatening phone call, school officials contacted the West Bloomfield Police Department, who swiftly responded to the call and searched the premises with staff already on site. It was then found that there was no credible threat made to the building at that time, per an email sent by the school district to parents yesterday. Once again, a false threat during these ever dangerous times where violence on school campuses is not an unfamiliar foe, shut down class, wasted valuable public safety resources, and caused undue harm to a local community, this time in West Bloomfield. In response to the incident, the West Bloomfield School District officials are encouraging parents to have serious discussions about making false threats with their kids. And again, giving that a reminder that while threats should and will be taken seriously by local school districts, by law enforcement, by the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, by federal and state authorities as well, they are not a free day off of school for you students that may just happen to be tuning in right now when you should be in class. If you are tuning in, or if you're watching us later on, first off, thank you. Second off, don't be doing this stuff. This is bad news. This is not how you're going to get a day off of class. It's how you're going to get yourself in a whole lot of trouble. These are responded to very seriously by law enforcement at all levels, and you will be punished to the fullest extent of the law. Here is what the West Bloomfield School District said in a statement to staff, students, and families last night in response to the incident. This is an email from the superintendent of schools, Dr. Danya Bazzi, to parents, to staff, to faculty, and students in the West Bloomfield School District. It goes as follows, quote, "Good morning, Team WB. This morning, the West Bloomfield Police Department, or WBPD, received an anonymous phone call from a spoofed phone number stating that there was a bomb threat and a student with a weapon at the West Bloomfield Middle School prior to the start of the school day. WBPD arrived at the middle school in conjunction with on-site staff and searched the building for the alleged threat. Once the building was secured, the West Bloomfield Police Department and the district administrators determined that this was not a credible threat. The West Bloomfield Police Department is working with law enforcement partners to determine where this phone call did originate. Again, it was a spoofed phone call, allegedly. The WBPD is doing everything it can to identify the individuals responsible. Parents, we urge you to speak with your children about the seriousness of making a threat to a school or fueling rumors on social media that have not been verified. Students found guilty will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Please know that the safety and security of our students and staff is our first priority. We would like to thank our staff and the first responders for their immediate and ongoing support. In regards to other events that are scheduled this week or were scheduled yesterday in the West Bloomfield School District, particularly at West Bloomfield Middle School where this threat was made. The eighth grade promotion ceremony that was scheduled to be held on Tuesday evening has been rescheduled. That is going to happen on Thursday this week, June 15th at 6 p.m. to celebrate the graduating 8th graders. Moving on just down the street next fall to West Bloomfield High School. Students should arrive at 5:30 p.m. Again, the 8th grade promotion ceremony celebrating the end of the 8th graders' middle school journey, and they're moving on to high school. That was scheduled for Tuesday night and ultimately canceled as a result of the alleged bomb threat, has been moved to Thursday, June 15th at 6 p.m. Students should arrive at the middle school for this event at 5:30 p.m. The district continued in this statement saying, quote, "We thank you for your continued support and trust in our schools. In partnership, Dr. Danya H. Bazzi, PhD, Superintendent," and closed quote. What's interesting and was noted in this is not only is making the threats a problematic behavior for students who may be involved in that, but also spreading those rumors on social media, something that's not credible or something that has not been verified. Spreading that on social media can cause a lot of panic. That's a lesson we learned actually during the Michigan State University school shooting in February, where there were shootings at Berkey Hall, there were shootings at the MSU Union, all by the same person. But as the news unfolded, as people were communicating via social media and just through the grapevine, over text messages, calls, and so on, trying to get information to their students on campus, trying to get information between students on campus and communicate where the threat may be on campus or threats. A lot of rumors were spread around that there were multiple shooters on campus. There have been additional shootings at places like the intramural sports building on the east side of the campus, and so on and so forth, that caused a lot of additional panic in an already stressful situation. So in these cases, spreading those social media rumors can be in some ways as harmful as making the threats themselves can be, because now all this information is out there that further causes fear amongst the public that may not be necessary, or it then snowballs, and you have kind of that effect of where you're playing the game of telephone as a kid, and you start off with one message, and as it goes along, maybe that message continues on as it was originated, but often it changes to something kind of similar or something very different than it was at the beginning. All the more reason why the West Bloomfield School District and local law enforcement is encouraging those that may get this kind of information over social media, you should still report it. Report it to local authorities. If you see a threat against the school district on social media, you should report that to your local school district. You should report that to your local police department or the Oakland County Sheriff's Office or other law enforcement so that an investigation can be made. And at the best case scenario, it is found to be a non-credible threat. At the worst case scenario, you may have helped law enforcement or other public safety officials get ahead of something and prevent a tragedy from happening in your community. But spreading rumors is different than spreading credible information or spreading or explaining information that you have seen on social media that could be potentially threatening to your community. So something to really have a serious conversation about with your kids, and something to think about yourselves as well, because there is no indication that this was made by a kid, that this threat was called in on a spoofed phone number from a kid. That has not been indicated. Our team at Civic Center TV has reached out to the West Bloomfield Police Department, who said because this is an ongoing investigation, they are not commenting on this at this time. The same answer was provided by the West Bloomfield School District, who provided us a copy of the statement they sent out yesterday, however, said they would not be commenting any further at this time. about this incident as the investigation goes on. Again, a threat was made to West Bloomfield Middle School on Tuesday via an allegedly spoofed phone call, calling in a bomb threat just before 8 a.m. School officials and police departments had searched the building, found there was no credible threat. Classes were canceled for the day. After-school events at the middle school were canceled for the day and have been rescheduled, including their 8th grade promotion ceremony, or graduation ceremony, however you want to word it, which is now going to be on Thursday of this week at 6 p.m. with student arrival at 5:30 p.m. We will do our best to keep you updated on this. If we get any more information, we will let you know as soon as possible, as we are covering West Bloomfield and the Tri-Cities of Keiko Harbor, Orchard Lake, and Sylvan Lake, all of whom are under the umbrella, at least in part, of the West Bloomfield School District. So we will do our best to keep you informed on that and those around us on the Megacast network about this developing story. That full article from the Detroit News with the most up-to-date information at this time can be found linked on our website today, civiccentertv.com, on our local news page. In addition, making headlines today on our local news page from Bridge, Michigan's U Stella U, as we continue on the education front. A little bit more positive news, however. Previously discussed legislation. I apologize. I got my wires crossed and skipped forward to a later article. We'll get back to education in just a little bit. This is very much different than that. Also making headlines today on our local news page from Bridge, Michigan's U Stella U, the previously discussed legislation that would permit sales of alcohol at select college sporting events has gained steam once again in the city of Lansing at our state capitol. State Senator Sean McCann, a Democrat from Kalamazoo, proposed a bill that would permit sales of alcoholic beverages to patrons at college sporting events within an hour before and a half hour following all games. At this time, college sporting events in Michigan are barred from selling alcohol on campus, quite antithetical to the case-by-case basis in which other sporting events such as MLS soccer or international soccer matches that we've seen at places such as the Big House in Ann Arbor, which do permit alcohol sales on a case-by-case basis after a permit has been properly applied for and received by the venue for those specific events. However, those have not been permitted for individual college sporting events, as that is barred at this time by the state. Senator McCann told the press that this is something colleges have been asking for a while, and an amenity that's sought after by fans of these sports and others who attend the games as well. It was also noted that this would be an additional revenue stream for these public universities that would offset some costs and also help them provide better services on campus each and every day. In addition, the change of heart would come with the passage of this new legislation would put Michigan's major public universities on par with the other 14 Big Ten schools, of which 11 across the board currently permit alcohol sales at their games. In this case, if alcohol sales at football and other major sporting events at Michigan public universities would become permitted under state law, that would make the University of Michigan and Michigan State the 12th and 13th of the 14 Big Ten other 14 other Big Ten universities that already have some rules in place for alcohol sales at their games, whether for or against. That would put them in the category of being for that, and then 13 out of the 14 Big Ten schools would permit alcohol sales at their games. Michigan State University Chief Safety Officer Marlon Lynch also argued that these permissions would help to curb a major issue on college campuses before these games, underage drinking, stating, quote, that the regulatory and compliance initiatives will still be followed within our venues with the sales requiring proof of identification, closed quote. McCann also mentioned another issue that may be impacted by such legislation, binge drinking, claiming, as others have in the past, that allowing in-stadium sales would reduce the rate at which game-goers would drink heavily before entering the stadium, allowing staff tending bar at the game to make decisions on the fitness of individuals to continue consuming alcohol while on site, should they reach a point where they are no longer in any condition to continue drinking for threat of their own safety or the safety of the general public. However, experts, including those at the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, or the NIAA, claim that this is faulty logic, with their senior scientific advisor, Aaron White, stating, quote, the logic that allowing alcohol sales inside stadiums will decrease game day drinking is dubious, at best, and closed quote. So I think where there may be a mix-up here between the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism's Aaron White and the intent of the argument that is being made that allowing in-stadium alcohol sales would reduce binge drinking beforehand. Sure, it may decrease binge drinking on the game day before entering the stadium. It certainly won't eliminate that. Particularly, I would say, it probably won't eliminate that for students who tend to do that because, well, let's just call a spade a spade. They're young and they're dumb and they're making bad decisions. And they're going to learn what the consequences of those bad decisions, most likely, hopefully, we would think, the next morning over as they're waking up and not in some other much worse way. Now, would this eliminate that? Would this really even reduce that problem at a margin that is significant enough for this to be truly impactful on these game days, especially for major sporting events like Michigan State football, University of Michigan football, basketball games, and so on? Probably not, but it at least is moving the needle in a more positive direction in these cases and allowing those that otherwise would be entering the stadiums to have the permission to purchase alcohol at the stadium and continue to enjoy adult beverages, so should they choose, with the responsibility that's already in the hands of employees at vendor locations in those stadiums and on campus to then make better informed decisions about the fitness of someone to continue drinking on site. So there are arguments all across the board about the validity of whether or not allowing alcohol sales on campus for college sporting events at Michigan's public universities would actually help reduce binge drinking and underage drinking and be a benefit on a broad scale, be a benefit to the local communities in these college towns, or if it's going to maybe cause some additional problems or simply just not help anything altogether and keep things exactly where they're at. There's plenty of arguments to be made that will continue to be made as this legislation is proposed, discussed, and possibly up for vote at some time in the near future. You can read more about this proposed legislation from Michigan State Senator Sean McCann out of Kalamazoo, as well as arguments on both sides of this debate from Bridge, Michigan, a great article by you, Stella Yu, linked on our website today, civiccentertv.com, on our local news page. In addition, making headlines today from the Detroit News' Jennifer Chambers. This is what I was talking about earlier on. Continuing on the education front, outgoing 8th graders in Michigan will have some new coursework added to their high school journeys beginning next fall. The state of Michigan has officially added financial literacy coursework requirements for graduation for the new class of high schoolers and those in graduating classes behind them, per legislation passed on a bipartisan basis in 2022. Now, the discussion has turned instead to the implementation of these new requirements by the Michigan State Board of Education, or otherwise known as the MDE, with some recommending integrating financial literacy requirements into existing credit requirements for economics coursework, and others actually balking at that idea, essentially saying that it goes against the intent of the law that implements financial literacy education as a graduation requirement altogether, and that students should receive more extensive financial literacy coursework and that should be executed as a standalone class, a standalone curriculum. State Board of Education member Nikki Snyder, a Republican from Dexter, exclaimed on that note that the state board needs to, quote, go back to the drawing board, and closed quote, on how to implement financial literacy classwork, passionately stating that the proposed standards are, quote, woefully inadequate, and that, quote, these are not content expectations, they are social studies standards. Students need to make educated decisions on borrowing, and close quote. That is one of the focal points, is financial literacy, especially from those on the Republican side of the aisle, to make better informed decisions about taking out loans, particularly student loans, as in recent years the Democratic Party in particular, especially at the federal level, has argued in favor or has put into their platform being in favor of student loan debt relief, while Republicans opposing that debt relief say that there should be better education on making informed decisions when it comes to borrowing, and students, even as they're exiting high school and considering going to college, should consider the financial implications of that as well and know how to make better informed decisions, perhaps take time off to go into the workforce, to save some money to be able to pay for school, and so on and so forth. Those are amongst the arguments. We at the Megacast are not making any sort of an argument one way or the other. That's just where we're at on this issue in our politics at this time. Continuing on, per the Detroit News, quote, among the MDE's listed content expectations for the courses in financial literacy are earning income, buying goods and services, saving, using credit, financial investing, and protecting and insuring, in close quote. In addition, paying taxes and budgeting, as well as subsections on the federal application for student aid, or FAFSA, student loans, and student grants were also approved as part of this financial literacy coursework this week by the Michigan Board of Education. The Michigan Department of Education spokesperson Martin Ackley says that now the rest of the task of teaching financial literacy and implementing these new policies is now in the hands of educators on the local level, stating, quote, standards are the framework upon which local curriculum is built. They represent the floor and not the ceiling when it comes to curriculum and course development. Curriculum, course development, structure, and credit determination and approval are determined at the discretion of the local school district, end closed quote. However, Bob Kefkin, the Associate Director for Government Relations at the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals, claims that no guidance from the MDE, the Michigan Department of Education, has yet to be provided to local administrators on these new requirements for graduation or standards of financial literacy coursework education at this time, making it more difficult for those local educators, those local school districts, to put those requirements in place and properly label them, properly describe them to the general public, and then for educators on the local level at each school on a school-by-school basis to then put together lesson plans for this financial literacy coursework, which again goes into effect this fall. So summer is about to begin for a lot of teachers across the state of Michigan, or it has already, and this coursework for those teaching financial literacy or perhaps economics in high school, depending on how this is ultimately going to be executed, they're going to need to have some time to prepare those lesson plans for next fall, implement financial literacy into their lesson plans should it be part of an economics class, and that's going to take some time. Some guidance is going to be needed. But at this time, per Bob Kefkin of the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals, that guidance has not yet been provided by the Michigan Department of Education. You can learn even more information on financial literacy coursework requirements for high school students that begins next fall by reading this full article from the Detroit News, third down on our website today from the top at civiccentertv.com on our local news page. Also making news today from Ann Runkle at the Oakland Press, the City of Farmington Hills. Congratulations to them as they are celebrating their 50th anniversary this summer in a community celebration just after the 4th of July holiday. The community has been invited to join the city at Founders Sports Park on 8 Mile Road on July 6th at 7 p.m. for a night of partying fun with live music, a climbing tower, games, and other activities, and then fireworks beginning at 10 o'clock p.m. The theme of the celebration will be shining a light on the past of the city and in order to build a brighter future for Farmington Hills, with city manager Gary Mekchin saying, quote, we hope to see our community members, including families and business owners, join in on the fun, end closed quote. More information can be found on the 50th anniversary of the City of Farmington Hills and this celebration, again, July 6th at 7 p.m. at Founders Sports Park on 8 Mile Road, can be found at fhgov.com. Farmington Hills Gov.com, and you can also find even more information as well as more specifics on the fun you'll be able to experience at this event by clicking through this article from Ann Runkle at the Oakland Press today on our local news page, civiccentertv.com. Finally, making headlines today on our local news page from our good friend Ansar Khan at MLive, the Detroit Pistons on Tuesday formally introduced their newest head coach, Monty Williams, at their facility in downtown Detroit, making his whopping 6-year, $78.5 million contract the most lucrative for a head coach in NBA history official. Williams was candid about the opportunity in the press conference, stating that he was not only enticed to take the job by the prospect of coaching some very talented young players like Cade Cunningham, former #1 overall pick, Jaden Ivey, a top 5 pick in last year's draft, as well as Jalen Duren, but also the quite generous financial offer played a big factor in him taking the job in the end. Coach Williams told the press, quote, "That's something people don't talk about. They always say it wasn't the money. I always laugh at that and think it's disrespectful. When somebody is that generous to pay me that kind of money, one, that should be applauded, and two, that should be talked about." Now, also at the press conference, Coach Williams said he was excited to get to work after the show of confidence that the organization had put in him, and noted that he was both pleasantly surprised and slightly shaken, in fact, by the mass turnout of players at that event. Calvin at Master Control, I believe we may have a clip of him talking about those players for today. Please let me know in my ear if we don't, and if we don't, I will continue on and kind of give the gist of what that statement was. Otherwise, if we do have that, let me know also, and we'll go to that clip in a moment. But almost the entire team showed up to the press conference yesterday. There was an absence of a couple of players, including starting forward Bojan Bogdanovic, who was not in attendance, presumably might be overseas with family, as many players, international players do over the offseason. But almost the entire team, including most of the stars, were there. Calvin, are we hearing that on our side? It appears we are not hearing that clip. That is fine. Basically, what Coach Williams had said in that clip is that he was moved by having those players come to that event yesterday to help welcome him to Detroit to become their new head coach, with just a few players not in attendance for a variety of different reasons. With the passion that they had already put in to showing him that they are supporting him as their new head coach, that his leadership is important to them, that's a big show of confidence, and he took that very personally and said he was both happy that had thrilled that had happened, but also kind of made him a little bit nervous because he was not expecting almost the entire team to show up to the press conference. In addition, he also talked about what he wants to accomplish in the city of Detroit as the head coach of the Detroit Pistons. And to summarize that, as we may be able to also play another clip in the background, but I'll just talk about what he said in that clip specifically. If we don't have the audio, he said he wants to be a big figure in the state of Michigan and in the Detroit area ultimately at the end of his tenure. He wants to be someone that's remembered very, very favorably in the city of Detroit, to the point where they even say, you know what, we think Monty Williams is from Detroit. He compared his situation, or his ideal situation in this case, to that of former Pistons star Dave Bing, former mayor of Detroit also, who so many associate with Detroit because of his time with the Pistons, because of his time as the mayor, to the point where they believe that he is, in fact, from Detroit, born and raised, but in fact, of course, he is not. Monty Williams wants a similar success. He wants to bring this Pistons organization back to the glory days that it's had during the Bad Boys era, during the going to work era from 2001 or so until 2008, 2009, the last time the Pistons won a playoff game, by the way. And what's really interesting about this connection is not only, of course, Williams had said the money played a huge part in him taking this role, but in addition, Joe Pompliano, who is the host of the Joe Pomp Show. You can find more information on that on his Twitter at Joe Pompliano. He also noted a part of the deal that Monty Williams made with the Pistons, and this is per a report from the Detroit Free Press's Omari Sankofa III. The Pistons also provided Williams and his family access to a private jet, health care benefits for his wife, who is currently undergoing cancer treatment, as well as school assistance for his kid, his son, who was also a prolific basketball player and began his high school basketball career in Arizona last school year. He will now be transferring in, per reports, to Birmingham Brother Rice, staying right here in our local area in Oakland County, going to one of the great basketball programs in the entire state of Michigan. That another part of this deal. A really enticing story here. A really interesting story here about how they even got the connection with Monty Williams. Allegedly, per other reports, they had one meeting with Monty Williams about the job where they gave him a formal offer. Tom Gores, the owner of the Pistons, reportedly had said he was not going to have a negotiation on that. He was going to provide an offer. It was going to be a generous offer. Before he provided that offer, Monty Williams gave some parameters of what he was looking for. He was looking for a long-term contract. He was looking for a lucrative contract, and looking for some additional benefits to help his family make that transition from Arizona, where he had previously coached the Phoenix Suns for the last several years, to Detroit and southeastern Michigan, especially given his current family situation with his son early in his high school career, and with his wife, of course, undergoing cancer treatment. As far as basketball is concerned, this is a great move for the Detroit Pistons. They're bringing in a guy who is known for player development, known for building those relationships. He was a key player in helping to develop Chris Paul, a legendary point guard in the NBA, who he had previously coached at his last job in Phoenix as well, and coached Chris Paul early on in his career when he was with the New Orleans Hornets. Very early on, the first team he played for, and ultimately became one of the best point guards in this generation. He's also helped develop other young talent, including in Phoenix, such as Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, into very high-quality young players, and brought that team back from a 20-plus win season to being number one seed in the Western Conference, to playing the Western Conference Finals, to playing the NBA Finals, where they ultimately lost to the Milwaukee Bucks. And building those relationships with players has also been a key part of his coaching career, and a key part of what everybody in the NBA circle says about Monty Williams as a person. That may play a big role in how he connects with these young players, and already really good to see so many of those players showing up to that press conference, as now that shows they have confidence in him, they want to learn from him, and now he'll take the reins of this team. He also has a previous connection with the Detroit Pistons general manager Troy Weaver from when Monty was an assistant coach in Oklahoma City with the Oklahoma City Thunder, where Troy Weaver had previously worked in their front office before taking the Pistons GM job just a few years ago. So, plenty of promise for this young team. It still is a young team. There should be some patience still from this fan base, as the players are in their early 20s. They're very early on in their career. There's not a whole lot of veteran presence on this team, but they got a lot of young talent. Cade Cunningham said yesterday, he told Mickey York from Bally Sports Detroit, as well as Grant Long, a former Piston and a reporter with Bally Sports also, that he's feeling great. He is healthy. He is back to full strength. He's excited for next season. Jaden Ivey, who had to take on a much bigger role as a rookie this season than was expected in the absence of Cade Cunningham after his leg injury, came in and had a really nice rookie season, was amongst the top rookies in the NBA last season, playing out of position, typically a shooting guard, playing at the point guard position last season. And then great development from a very young center in Jalen Duren, who's getting a lot of praise from across NBA circles, and with some comparisons even to a young Dwight Howard, who was one of the most dominant centers in basketball in the late aughts and into the early 2010s in his time with the Orlando Magic. So plenty of promise there. A top 5 draft pick. May they perhaps trade down later on to get some more assets or get some veteran presence into this team. They have cap space as well that could help them bring in some vets, fill in some of these holes. There is a lot of promise in Detroit at this time for the Detroit Pistons. It's always exciting bringing in a new coach. That being said, some patience is going to continue to need to be required by the Pistons fan base. No, we shouldn't tolerate a 17-win season again and the worst record in the NBA, and having to hope for the number 1 overall pick to try to get a generational talent like they ultimately did not do this offseason in Victor Wembanyama, who ultimately will go to the San Antonio Spurs next week with the number 1 overall pick. But that leash that the franchise has from the fan base with that patience is and should continue to be shorter day by day as this team continues to develop, as Cade Cunningham enters his 3rd season and enters the season healthy for the first time in his career. Jaden Ivey hoping to take a big step in his sophomore year. Same thing with Jalen Duren, and then continuing to develop young guys and hoping they take that next step. Guys like Isaiah Stewart off the bench, and especially Killian Hayes, a top 10 draft pick a few years ago, who has been disappointing to say the least for the Pistons by and large, although his defensive presence has been a lot better than his offensive presence. All of that information on the press conference yesterday with Monty Williams introduced as the head coach of the Detroit Pistons can be found on our local news page today, civiccentertv.com. We'll take a break on the Megacast. On the other side, how one local nonprofit is helping to prevent violence in our communities right here in southeastern Michigan. Starlite Williams joins us from S.A.V.E. Detroit up next on the Megacast.
How do you know when you've made the right decision? It's the feeling you get in your gut. The one that tells you what's right or wrong. It's the one that says, sure, I can have a drink. Or the feeling that says, okay, I've been drinking. Now what? It's the voice inside you that says, I'm buzzed. Better leave the car when it's time to go. Plan ahead. Catch a sober ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
Looking for a midweek meal? Keep the bag lunch at home this summer and enjoy street food in your neighborhood with Food Truck Tuesdays. Enjoy cuisine from around Michigan outside the WB Parks and Recreation Activity Center with a different vendor every Tuesday, like the Potato Bar on June 27th. All summer, every Tuesday, Food Truck Tuesday. This community update from Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Oakland County and the state of Michigan. I'm your host, Tyler Kieft. As always, you can keep up to date with us on civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find information on all of our partnering stations, including those that you can join us live Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. in your local community, live to tape in places like Orion Neighborhood Television in Orion Township and Lake Orion, and all the places you can find us on demand as well. civiccentertv.com/megacast for all of that. Well, whether it's gun violence or verbal abuse or fisticuffs, there's plenty of different forms of violence we see day by day in our communities here in Oakland County and throughout southeastern Michigan. Sometimes that can lead to a massive amount of violence, and sometimes that can lead to some very, very unfortunate situations in our cities and in our local communities as well. One local organization is looking to take a stand against that by educating and by going into these situations to try to mediate what may cause the violence before it happens. Joining us now on the Megacast is Starlite Williams, one of the co-founders of S.A.V.E. Detroit, on the Megacast today. Starlite, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Tyler. Thank you for having us. I truly appreciate you guys.
Yeah, so glad to have you on to talk about S.A.V.E. Detroit. For those that aren't familiar with your nonprofit, tell us about S.A.V.E. Detroit, its history, and the mission or the services you're providing in Detroit and the local area.
Awesome. So S.A.V.E. Detroit stands for Stopping All Violence Everywhere. We're based here in Detroit, originated in Detroit. So my husband and I are native Detroiters. It was founded by my husband, Jon Williams. Born and raised, he grew up on the east side of Detroit, attended Detroit public schools, played basketball at every Detroit park and gym there is. And, out of that came S.A.V.E. Detroit. It started in 2008. Unfortunately, it was due to an unfortunate situation. Jon had a really dear friend of his. He basically prevented him from murdering another person, and then eventually that same guy was murdered that particular night by someone else, and that's how S.A.V.E. Detroit was kind of birthed as far as the name. But I always tell Jon, that he had, S.A.V.E. Detroit had already existed well before that, because he was always about bringing the community together with basketball, because he loved basketball so much. But that's how S.A.V.E. Detroit kind of came about, due to that unfortunate situation. And then just a little bit more about, what we do. We do a lot of different programs we start with our youth. Our youth is, of course, our future. And so we want to be able to instill in them some of those same qualities, those same things that we learned, that we grew up on when it came to the different rec centers that we grew up on, things of that nature. And so we try to instill those same tools and skills into our youth today.
Yeah, what's interesting is even on your website, savedetroit.org, what caught my eye immediately on your About page, or right at the top of that homepage, is that tackling this issue can be complicated, and there's so much that goes into how violence pops up in communities anywhere in Michigan or around the world. But how to solve that can be even more complicated, and your goal is to tackle that, as it says, quote, one person, one issue, and one situation, and closed quote, at a time. So how does that also play into the work that you're doing out on the streets every single day in the communities in Detroit to try to address the issue of violence, one person at a time, one group at a time, and ultimately teach them some other ways that maybe they can address some issues they're having in their community with individuals or with groups, and prevent those from ultimately turning to violence?
Yeah, so like I said, we started with the youth. We know that the violence does not only start and ends with our youth, but they are our future. So we, as we say, we're tackling one person at a time, we wanted to start with our youth because, again, they are our future. We want to give them all of the different tools and prepare them for the different things that they are not able to cope with, that they don't know how to cope with. We just remember when we were young, all of the different activities that we were able to be involved in, the places, the different rec centers that we were able to participate in to keep us off the street. Our youth are so influenced by so much more than what I was able to see when we were growing up, And so we want to be able to give them those positive avenues and those positive activities that they can, definitely tap into. So when we say one person at a time, we're starting with the youth because we know that's our future. But then we also want to tap into our adults as well, because we want to be able to provide different programs and initiatives for them as well. One situation at a time. Violence can be so many things. It's so broad. It isn't just gun violence. It's, physical violence. It's, verbal violence. It's psychological. It's sexual. It's socioeconomic violence. So all of those situations, they play a part in violence. And so when we talk about one situation at a time, what are the different situations or what are the different issues that we're seeing that we can talk about, we can bring awareness to, that we can help make an impact to our community by making them aware. What can we do about, physical abuse, verbal abuse, getting our community involved. It isn't just about, Jon and I and our organization and our group. It's about all of us collectively. And so that's how we look at it in that perspective of bringing everything together, one situation, one person at a time.
Joining us on today's edition of the program is Starlite Williams, the Vice President of S.A.V.E. Detroit. You can find more information on the organization, ways you can get involved as well at savedetroit.org or by visiting sharedetroit.org, where you'll learn more about S.A.V.E. Detroit and 356 other charities and nonprofits and counting on their platform, sharedetroit.org. And what's so great about this, and one of the great points that you made, is this kind of all comes back to not necessarily violence prevention, but community building. And as much as we hear, Starlite, about the violence in our major cities and the issues that have grown from that violence, what we don't hear about enough is the community of individuals and organizations that are working together to address that and build those communities. So how does partnership play into the work that you're doing at S.A.V.E. Detroit, addressing violence from the grassroots in Detroit?
It plays a big part. We can't do it alone. We need to partner with as many organizations, as many neighbors, as many communities as possible to actually see this thing go into full force. We have to come together as a whole. And so we have linked up with a few other organizations. And we always encourage working with other organizations that share the same similar goals that we have. We have done things with Mac Alive. They cater to the east side of Detroit communities. 2 Times Focus, they have their own mentorship programs that we have joined with them and partner with them on a few occasions. Encouragement Corner Outreach. They are a ministry organization that does community outreaching throughout the community. That's with Fred and LaQuana Bolton. So partnership is extremely important, because without partners, without the community coming together, we won't be able to stop the violence everywhere.
Joining us on the program today is Starlite Williams, the Vice President of S.A.V.E. Detroit, one of over 350 charities and nonprofits supported on the Share Detroit platform. One of the ways you can support them is by joining them out in the community in the Detroit area in July on Belle Isle. You have your first annual 5K run and walk event coming up on July 16th. Tell us about this event, how people can participate.
Yeah, so we are so excited. It's Sunday, July 16th, starting at 8 o'clock to 12 p.m. on Belle Isle. You can definitely get involved. You can check us out on Share Detroit website. We have a profile there where you can sign up there. You can also go to our own website at savedetroit.org, or you can find our event on Eventbrite. We highly encourage everyone to participate. there is a fee, there is a savings if you join as a team, but it's more than just a 5K. We really want to bring the community together so that they can understand what the different resources are. Our focus for this 5K is focusing on driving awareness to mental health. It's extremely important. It's a topic that's not talked about a lot. There's a really big stigma about it. And we really want to provide those resources that's available that a lot of people are not aware of. Let's talk about it. Let's support each other. Let's come together and let's make a difference. So Bell Owls, July 16th from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Be there. We're going to have a lot of fun. This is our first one. We will be doing it every year moving forward, but we really want to bring the community together. It will be timed by the Michigan Running Foundation. So they will be there. So if you're a competitor, definitely you can still be, you can get your stats. But like I said, it's more than just a 5K. We really want to bring the community together.
Some competition and some community building on Belle Isle. Again, July 16th. Start time 8 a.m., finish time 11 a.m., $45 for adult registration, $35 for youth registration. That includes a team shirt. You can register as a team at a discount as well. SaveDetroit.org/events for more information. You can also find more info on ShareDetroit.org. Starlite, with another minute or so left on today's show today, I want to give you an opportunity. Any other volunteer opportunities or ways that people can get involved with Save Detroit, even beyond the 5K?
Yeah, absolutely. Go to our website. We have a lot of different volunteer options. We are always looking to partner with other organizations. Let us know about your events. We will definitely love to participate and join and bring people out to your events as well. There's so many ways that we can get involved. And like I said, this is more than just us. It's more than just Save Detroit. This is really about the community coming together. We definitely look for volunteers for all of our different events, especially for our 5K that's coming up. We will be a part of the Share Detroit Summer, Summer Detroit. So we'll be there this June 10th at 5 p.m. So be there at the Jimmy John Field. So we'll be participating with you guys there as well. So just come and join us, and feel free to reach out to us in any way. Our handle, Facebook and Instagram is SaveDetroit.org. Our website is SaveDetroit.org.
You're doing in the city of Detroit to address a complicated issue, but doing it in a way that's building people up as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Always appreciate having our local charities and nonprofits on the program to talk about all the great things they're doing in our local community. That includes Starlite Williams and the team at Save Detroit, helping to both intervene in violence in our local communities, but also prevent that violence as well and find those root causes and also reasons for communities to come together to prevent violence now and in the future. SaveDetroit.org is their website, and their event, their 5K. You can also register for that on their website as well at SaveDetroit.org. Another really fun event this summer coming up very soon. We're just a few weeks away from Royal Oak Taco Fest, and recently on the program, we were joined by the organizer of the event, Jon Witz, to talk about the event expanding in 2023, hopefully to make it a little bit less congested, as well as security concerns after recent incidents at local events here in our local area, but also to talk about all of the great fun activities and food trucks at this year's event. Let's take a look at that recent interview on the Megacast.
Yeah, we thought 44 taco trucks would be enough, and it turned out we needed more. So here we are, 2023, and literally bigger, better, newer. So excited to be here to tell you about it.
Yeah, we brought up last week on the program, civiccentertv.com/megacast for that, an article from Mike McConnell in the Oakland Press where it said it itself. About 60,000 people turned out over 4 days last year for Royal Oak Taco Fest, a huge event with 44 taco trucks. Always a big success, always a lot of fun in Royal Oak. But as you said, the need for it to be a little bit more expansive and have more space for people so it's not as crowded, that played a big factor in some of the changes coming this year. Let's first, John, go over what are some of the changes people can expect at Royal Oak Taco Fest in 2023.
Well, we're upping the amount of trucks, so we're going to go in the 55 range. We're also adding a little bit of barbecue for the 4th of July. So we're going to have Cowboy Barbecue, which is a world champion barbecue truck that tours the country. Imaginate from Royal Oak. It is 4th of July. The theme is tacos, of course, but if anybody does have that itch for a little barbecue on one of the days, that'll absolutely be there. But, again, the number one story is more trucks. The number two story, more entertainment. We're adding a third music stage, a lot more strolling entertainers, more mariachi acts that are, playing either on stage or touring. So more entertainment for folks. An expanded kids area is also new, which will be in Centennial Commons, which is, again, feedback that we received last year. More for the family. So more for the family it is. And then more space to host everyone. And then lastly, we are limiting the amount of tickets that are sold at the event and adding a 5th day. So last year was 4 days, and you had as many as 18,000 people in a day. This year we'll be cutting that down to, no more than 13 to 15,000 a day. So again, with the more trucks and less people means a better experience for our guests. And we're, again, year 2. So what we learned from the turnout last year is just keep an eye on how many people we're letting in. And, make it bigger and better. So that gives you the quick scoop of what's happening.
Yes, taking it back to last year, we know there's so much enthusiasm in Royal Oak for these kinds of events, whether it's Winter Blast, of course, there's Arts, Beats, and Eats that you also organize, and Royal Oak Taco Fest last year in its first year obviously had so much enthusiasm behind it from the community in Royal Oak and in surrounding areas. When you were initially planning this event and others that were in the process of organizing it, did you ever expect that first year to have such a big boom for a new event like this with 44 taco trucks over 4 days?
We did not expect it to be as big. And again, part of it is 4th of July. Michigan folks are, known for taking off up north or, wanting to be outdoors, not necessarily, gravitating, to a downtown. And, I think the recipe that we had, turns out that there's demand for this kind of event on that weekend that we just were not sure of. And, so that to answer your question, we expected it to be successful, but we had great weather and we had a better than expected turnout. And I mean, it's weird to say that, as big as we had it and having 44 trucks that we got caught. But, a couple of the days, Saturday in the late afternoon into early evening, we were not able to let guests in because it got too crowded. And again, that turned out to be a little bit of a boon for downtown Royal Oak businesses. And the same thing with Sunday, but Sunday we cut it off a little bit earlier. So again, the experience inside the event improved, but it was just, yes, an unexpected kind of thing you'd like to have, sort of. You want it just to be perfect, but if you're going to make a little error in judgment, better to have it be versus a success. And and just make sure that everybody knows that we're making the tweaks to manage bigger crowds this year, and it should be amazing.
Yeah, it should be a much smoother experience with more days, more opportunities for people to get out there. So they're, maybe not necessarily having those gigantic boom days over that weekend. It is a 5-day event. RoyalOakTacoFest.com, the place to go. Friday through Tuesday, July 4th, Friday, June 30th through Tuesday, July 4th in Royal Oak. More information, RoyalOakTacoFest.com. You can also find them on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at Royal Oak Taco Fest, and on Twitter at TacoFestRO. More information, of course, as I said, RoyalOakTacoFest.com. And John, unfortunately, it's a part of our day-to-day life today, and we've seen it even at recent events. With something that's a big event like this, security always going to be a concern for both organizers and those in the city, given what we've had recently at Berkeley Days and at some other events. Let's talk about that too, because this is a big event. It is 4th of July weekend. People are going to be having a good time. You want people to have a good time, but safety also a big concern. So how's that being addressed by you as an organizer of the event, but also by the city of Royal Oak and other agencies nearby?
Well, there's definitely a planning piece that's going on. We'll be monitoring, or the law enforcement in the city of Royal Police, I think, take this event and all events seriously, from pre-planning meetings to monitoring social media to checking in with other agencies. So I think there'll be a kind of a macro planning side from the, on the police. On our side, we have been adding at Arts, Beats, and Eats last year, and Taco Fest, we are wanding folks as they come in. So we are checking, for weapons and keeping them out of the event. And that's been, something that, will continue and will hopefully create some peace of mind. I think last year's Taco Fest was incident free. And I think we are putting on an event, the nature of the entertainment, the family atmosphere, will hopefully also contribute to good times, but everyone will be aware and, and will be, very focused at our entry points and have both security and police roaming the event, eyes open, and, looking to, offset or mitigate any issues before it starts. And yes, it's unfortunate that we're talking about that before our lineup of taco trucks, but as you said, Tyler, it's it's front and center, and it's something we think a lot about. So.
Well, we appreciate having you on, Jon. Unfortunately, we were a little bit short for time. We'll have you stick around with us for a few more minutes after we end the show. We'll continue this interview so that people can find it on our website in full and get even more details. CivicCenterTV.com/Megacast will be the place to go for that. Big thank you to Jon Witz for joining us on today's program, as well as Starlite Williams from S.A.V.E. Detroit. And as always, we appreciate you for joining us every single day live from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., as well as throughout the afternoons and evenings for replays all across our Megacast network. Huge thank you as well to our crew at the Civic Center TV studio, our director, as always, Calvin Brown, on the program today. That does it for today's edition of the Megacast. Until next time, take care of each other, and we'll see you very soon.